How is identity important when discussing how the influence of state power affects nomadism throughout history, specifically in Iran? Well, through a variety of articles that I have studied, I'm going to discuss how we can pinpoint one, how state power has influenced or influences nomadic people in Iran throughout time, and two, how has their form of identity kept them from becoming completely sedentary. The first piece I'd like to discuss is Nomadism in Iran Throughout Time by Daniel Potts. In this piece, he talks about state influence into nomadic life. One of the invasions he had mentioned was the Mongol invasion into Iran. The toll on early nomadic civilization was devastating. Nomads had to become accustomed to raiding because a majority of pasture land was taken up by a large amount of people who had inhabited the region after the invasion. The period also brought upon large tax burdens on Iran's agricultural population, which favored Turk military commanders. Daniel Potts remarks, the Constitutional Revolution, World War I, the rise of Reza Shah, World War II, and the reign of Mohammad Reza Shah were all marked by major nomadic uprisings. According to General Arfa of the Reza Shah, the nomads of Iran were in a state of rebellion pretty much everywhere. This led to enforced sedentarization, which inevitably shrunk Iranian nomadic populations. This, in fact, was a major theme of the piece and how nomads have dealt with state powers. There's a chain of tradition that helps us assess what the nomads of Iran can tell us about land use and economic adaptations of nomads throughout time when dealing with state powers. The next piece I would like to discuss is Louis Beck's Qashqai Nomads and the Islamic Republic. In this piece, Louis Beck visited the Qashqai nomads, which were a conglomeration of clans in Iran consisting of Turkic people, Lurs, Kurds, and Arabs. Beck had visited the clan before and after the Islamic Revolution in 1979. He documents several changes that had happened to this nomadic society due to influence of state powers and conquest. Beck says, despite my predictions 20 years ago that most of the nomads would probably be forced to settle in villages and towns within a decade, many continue to move seasonally between winter and summer pastures and to rely on pastoralism for their livelihood. They gradually adopted vehicular transport and eventually sold all their camels. Some nomads did settle, but most retained an economic interest in pastoralism. At the beginning of spring, the nomads send their sheep and goats with shepherds to high altitude summer pastures, hundreds of kilometers away from the winter pastures near the Persian Gulf. Most of the people remain behind in winter pastures until early May, when they hire large trucks to transport themselves and their household goods to summer pastures in the north and northeast. New roads, some paved, now make this a one-day trip. Some positive changes have helped the Qashqai after the revolution. According to Beck, life, many nomads say, is more comfortable now than before, and they credit the new government. Uh, Changes include new improved roads, additional primary schools, formal education beyond primary level, houses, bathhouses, improved access to water, veterinary services, health services, modern medicine, stores, and ration goods. Urban Iranians complained about government rationing of supposedly scarce goods, but the nomads were glad to acquire goods that they had not had otherwise. Under the Shah, the nomads had been losing their access to pastoral and agricultural land, compelling them to settle in villages and assume new, in their view, demeaning livelihoods in low-paid agricultural and other wage labor. The new government permitted the nomads to cultivate crops and plant orchards on their pasture land, previously forbidden, allowing them to diversify their economies, meet new market demands, and still remain nomadic and reside on their terrace lands. The government also allowed the nomads to build houses in their seasonal pastures, another activity forbidden by the Shah's government. One thing I focused a lot on when studying these societies is the value of identity that they share. We can begin to see why these nomadic societies still can exist within such a modern and sedentary world based on the identity that they had developed. Lastly, I wanted to focus on Lindner's What Was a Nomadic Tribe. This piece ties in well with the last two because it begs the question, what was a nomadic tribe? This is important in understanding how nomadic tribes in general have changed and how much of that is due to state influence. Lindner says the glue cementing the tribesmen together was their common interest: pasture, plunder, the need to survive, and the desire to expand. While this article doesn't depict nomadism in Iran, it is important to note the value of identity within this statement. Linder spends this whole piece describing nomadic enterprise's advantages and limitations, and how state power has affected certain nomadic tribes, such as the Huns and the early Ottomans. I think the use of these articles can help us better understand how nomadic societies happen to exist under the influence of state power and where it will go in the future. How will state influence affect nomadic societies for generations to come?